Welcome to the Mid-Northeast Pets virtual training event, and thank you for joining us. We look forward to tonight's exciting session on strengthening your membership. Our featured speaker tonight is 2019-20 District Governor from 7430, Herb Klotz. Please welcome our host for this evening, District Governor-elect Mary Ellen Bentler from District 7410 in Northeast Pennsylvania.
Good evening, fellow Rotarians. Welcome to the third week of the 2021 Mid-Northeast Live Pets. I'm Mary Ellen Bentler, District Governor from 7410 in Northeast Pennsylvania. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items for you. First, if everybody could rename themselves and to look similar to this with your position in it. Please use the chat box to ask any questions throughout the event, and occasionally we will be putting a link to a video in the chat box for you as well. And lastly, this program is seen best in speaker view. As a reminder, your live online learning has two parts. The first of your required courses throughout the Learning Center at myrotary.org prior to each week. You will be required to complete a series of Learning Center courses that will introduce you to the weekly topic. It is important that you complete the Learning Center courses ahead of time. Second, to our live weekly online sessions, such as the one you are on now, we will be coming together every Tuesday in the month of March from 7 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. If you are not able to join us for a session, the event, minus the breakout rooms, will be recorded and available on the PETS website at petsnortheast.org. The following courses are designed to give you an overview of the tools that you will need to make your year as club leader successful. Our featured speaker tonight is Herb Klotz. Herb is the district governor in 2019-2020 for District 7430 in Eastern Pennsylvania. In 2021-22, Herb will be the Zone 32 Rotary Coordinator. His main responsibility will be to assist Rotarians in engaging current members and attracting new members, to develop vibrant clubs, and to help them meet their membership goals. For Herb's full biography, please visit the PETS website. In just a few minutes, Herb is going to share an analytical approach to looking at your club membership. Please watch this video titled Anytown.
As Rotary, we often ask ourselves, how do we grow, personally, professionally, and organizationally? The answer is simple. To grow Rotary, we need more Rotary clubs. Let's use Anytown as an example. Anytown is a city of 100,000 people and home to one proud Rotary club. But there are hundreds of other people of action, just like us, who are uniquely qualified to become Rotary members. They share the same drive and represent the values and fundamentals of a Rotary member. So why aren't they members? Well, the current club meets on Monday. There are leaders in Anytown who can't meet on a Monday. By excluding this segment, the potential members in Anytown has shrunk. Now consider, what if the meeting is at noon on Monday? There are people who can meet on Monday, but can't meet at noon. So now we have a smaller audience for Rotary in Anytown. Of the remaining group, some aren't interested in a club with a sit-down lunch and speakers. They are passionate about service, but aren't interested in a traditional club experience. And that is okay. The Rotary Club of Anytown isn't doing anything wrong. It just doesn't appeal to particular segments of the community. And if we're going to thrive for years to come, we must adapt and embrace change. In Anytown, we have an opportunity to expand because potential members are everywhere. More than half of the eligible people are prospective Rotary members, waiting to make a bigger impact in their community. But what Rotary Club exists for them? If any town creates new clubs at new times and new places, the hidden potential for Rotary will be revealed. As people of action, we must broaden our reach and provide opportunities to all leaders in the community. Together, all of us can grow Rotary.
The link to that video is in your chat box, just in case you want to watch it again or share it with others. Now, please welcome Herb Klotz.
Okay, let's get started. It's great to be with all of you today, and I'm hoping to give you a whole lot of helpful tips on actions that you can take to help grow your Rotary Club. But before I get started, what I'd like to do first is introduce your district membership team. So your district membership chairs are the people in your district that can help you with more ideas and more help to grow your Rotary Club. So in District 7210, it's Tony Marmo. In 7230, Marty Schulman. In 7255, Kevin Bagnasco. In 7410, Samantha Marizelli. 7475, Steve Goldberg. And in 7490, Joe Dino and Joe Ellen Knee. What I plan to talk to you today about are two major topics. The first topic is a data-driven diagnostic for club membership growth. And the second one are proven actions to grow membership in your Rotary Club. And then for the last half hour, you'll all be in breakout sessions to share and discuss ideas for membership growth. So let's talk a little bit about this data-driven diagnostic. Step one is we need to understand what's the problem we're trying to solve. Every Rotary Club is different. Every club has a different culture, and we're not all items like attracting new members is important, but sometimes the more important issue for a club is engagement of members. So with that in mind, the Zone 33, which is the zone just south of us in Middle Atlantic, USA, did a study to determine whether or not we could predict a Rotary Club's current and future membership growth successes and challenges. And the basis of this study was 6 years of membership trends from 16 North American districts and about 850 Rotary Clubs. And the goal here was to look at, if we looked at past membership history, could we predict future membership trends? And the answer was yes. It turned out that the likelihood of membership growth in a Rotary Club is not random. Growing Rotary Clubs tend to grow year after year. Declining clubs tend to decline year after year, unfortunately. And clubs holding their own can go either way. But the key three words on this slide are, unless something changes. And that something is almost always the leadership in the club. And that's why I'm talking to you today. As club president, you will have the single most influence on whether or not your club grows membership in the coming year. So I sent out personalized emails I sent out about 300 of these over the past several days. And in those emails, I provided your club's 3-year history, and two of the data points that I gave you were your average attraction rate and your average attrition rate. Now, if you didn't receive the email from me, I sent them to presidents-elect and some members of clubs. You can ask your district governor-elect, and I'll make sure you get that data. But that data will be useful in about 2 slides when I share with you the 4 quadrants. But again, before I get to that, I want to talk to you a little bit about attrition. Now, my point here is when we look at our clubs, we're always focused on, well, we've got to bring in new members. But we also need to take into account that attrition is real. And we're used to thinking about this in terms of retention. I've heard that for many years. We need to maximize our retention. But I prefer to use the word attrition, and attrition is simply 100% minus retention. And the reason why is because we can relate attrition directly to attraction. The typical attrition rate for a Rotary Club is somewhere between 10 and 15%. So we need to replace 10 to 15% of our club every year. If your attrition is a greater than 15, you probably need to pay more attention to, to issues such as engagement. So let's talk a little bit more about attraction versus attrition. On this plot here, I plot attraction rate versus attrition rate. And I picked a number of 12% as a dividing line between 4 quadrants. So if you're up here in the top left corner and you've got high attraction and low attrition, you have a growth culture in your club, and about 11% of the clubs in our zone, which is about 1,000 clubs, fall into that category. If you're in the low attrition, low attraction zone, you're what I call stable, and about 1/4 of our clubs fall into that. High attraction, high attrition, high turnover, about 35% of our clubs in there. And quadrant 4, I call the danger zone, and about 1/4 of our clubs are in that. That's high attrition, low attraction. Now, I want to go through each one of these in a little more detail, but I do want to mention a couple of caveats about this analysis. All I can do when I do this analysis is look at what your history is in terms of how many members have left and how many members have added over the last several years. So if, for example, you spun off a satellite club in the last year or 2, well, that would make your numbers go down, and then you might end up in quadrants 3 or 4, whereas you have a very healthy Rotary Club. But again, it's not perfect. In fact, right before this presentation, I got an email from a president of an E-club saying, some of this may not exactly apply, and I agree. But the reality is for almost all of our clubs, what I'm talking about here really does apply quite accurately. So let's go through each one of the 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1, high attraction, low attrition. You have a growth culture. My advice is keep doing what you're doing, but don't sit still. Keep improving. Identify other ways that you can help grow your Rotary Club. And by all means, share what you're doing with other clubs and your district leadership. We are all in this together. We all need to grow. The second quadrant is what I call stable. And this is low attrition, low attraction. Obviously, you've got low attrition, so your members are engaged. They're not leaving your club. Keep engaging your members. Your focus needs to be on attraction. And so some examples of areas you might want to look at are your service projects attractive? Are you using social media to promote what you do in your community? Member attraction events, alternate experiences, and flexibility. One caveat about this quadrant 2, if it turns out that you've got low attrition and you're not able to attract people, and you've been trying for several years, you may need to look at your club's culture. Which brings me to quadrant 3. And quadrant 3 is high turnover. Obviously, you've got high attraction, so you know how to attract new members. Keep doing that. Your focus needs to be on member engagement. So some things you might want to look at are, what's your club culture? Some of the questions for the second half of this session focus on club culture. And is your club inclusive? Do you reflect your community? And questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do you have meaningful projects? If you're trying to attract young professionals, are you doing family events? Because if you're not, it's going to be a real challenge. And then flexibility and alternative experiences. And then finally, quadrant 4, the danger zone. Now there's different levels of the danger zone, okay? So if you look at your numbers and you see, well, my attraction and our attrition isn't that different, well, then you're probably, close to one of these other quadrants. But if it turns out your attrition is much higher than your attraction, that's a different story. But our advice, if you're in the danger zone, is pretty much similar to what we talked about on the last slide. We need to initially focus on member engagement and the same sort of areas that we talked about before, because we've got to stop that revolving door syndrome. And then we can focus on attraction. So part 1 of this is, let's understand what's the problem we're trying to solve. Now, part 2 of my talk is about what are some proven techniques for growing your Rotary Club. But first, I have a transition slide. I want to talk a little bit about that. And on the title here, it says, is your club meeting attractive? It also could say, is your club attractive? Are your service projects attractive? Okay, so this is sort of step 1. We need to make sure that our club is attractive to who we're trying to attract, or what I'm going to talk about next will have virtually no impact. Okay, and the reason I put club meeting and I highlighted that was because most of the time, the first experience that a prospective Rotarian has with your club is at your club meeting. So your club meeting really does need to be attractive. Excuse me. So now let's talk about actions and approaches to grow your Rotary Club. Now this is based on a membership growth study that we did in 3 Eastern Pennsylvania districts, just south of you. And what we did was we looked only at clubs that grew in a given year. And then we interviewed the past presidents of those clubs during the years when they grew. And we surveyed and we interviewed them. And we looked for common themes. But for this presentation, I did a little bit more. I took a look at clubs in your 6 districts and identified several of them that either had long-term growth or short-term growth. And I interviewed someone in that club. And interestingly, I found the same trends as what we found when we looked at the 3 Pennsylvania districts. And there were 5 major factors. So let's go through them now. The top reasons for membership growth that I found on this study were clear membership goals and a plan, strong public image campaign and active social media, membership attraction events, including mixers, and what I call a growth culture. Another way of saying that is, in quotes, everybody in the club is a part of the membership committee. In other words, everybody's looking for prospective new members. 4th one is flexibility. And if you really want to grow your club, you look at an alternative meeting or a satellite club. Now, I went one step deeper with this, and I looked at what we called clubs with significant growth. And I defined that as greater than a 10 net increase in a given year. And this, of the whole sample size that we looked at, was about the top 2% of the cases. And what we learned when we did that study was even more striking. 90% of those clubs with significant growth added an alternative meeting or a satellite club. 90% of them had a focused social media or marketing campaign, and 90% of them held attraction events or membership drives. And most clubs in this category added 10 plus net in consecutive years. In other words, the success built on itself. It didn't just happen in 1 year, it happened in 2. And in fact, in one case, it happened 3 years in a row. So let's go through these 5 areas. The first one, starting with a goal and a plan. Now, we did a survey, but we also did some telephone interviews with some of these past presidents. And one of the things that I found when I did these telephone interviews was I kept hearing the same thing over and over again. And that was, they would say to me, Herb, when I was club president, membership growth was our top priority. Or when I was club president, membership growth was a top priority of our club. Now, interestingly, last week when I was interviewing clubs in your 6 districts, I talked to Gary, who's the president-elect from the Liberty Club. And one of the things he told me, and I didn't prompt this, honest, was he said, you know, our president made membership a top priority in our club. And we had 3 major areas of focus. We had a solid membership committee, we needed to be active in our community, and we needed to have strong public relations, which is the next topic that I'm going to talk about. They had a project called Operation Feed, which had 3 phases. Phase 1 was to feed the medical care workers, and phase 2 was feeding the food insecure, and phase 3 was feeding volunteers at vaccination sites. And it turns out that the Liberty Club, even during this pandemic, has grown by 8 members, maybe even more at this point. So it's absolutely critical that we have a goal when we look at as a leader. It's absolutely critical that we have a membership goal and we make sure that our club members know it. But that's not enough. We also need a plan, and that plan is up to you to work with your club to define that plan. And again, I already said it before, you have the most influence on whether or not your club will grow in the next year. So step 2, or action 2. Action 2 is a strong public image and social media presence. Now, clubs need to be seen as a positive doer in their community. Now, the example I want to share here is the Tunkhannock Club in Northeast Pennsylvania. Now, I talked with Mary and Samantha about the Tunkhannock Club, and they talked to me about a whole lot of areas where they're really good at engaging their members and keeping their members when they join. But they talked a whole lot about public image. They have a harvest wine festival where 3,000 to 4,000 people come to this small town. And public image was key in social media in making this event a success. And not only did they use it to promote the event, they also use it to highlight what they do with the money. They use Instagram and Facebook, and they mentioned that everybody in the club does Facebook shares so that the information gets out. They also have a newsletter and newspapers. They advertise on billboards. They mentioned that they recently created step signs to thank essential workers. Knocked on doors at businesses to put up step signs and posters. The Rhinebeck Club also mentioned social media and public image and getting the word out for their fundraisers, and they have an amazing project, an international project with their Interact Club. And again, this is one topic that we always need to get right. We need to make sure that we're seen as a positive doer in our community. Okay, I'm going to take a step back here for a minute before I go through the last three. And I want to talk about the pandemic. And here we are in a Zoom meeting with 250 presidents-elect and members of your district instead of meeting face-to-face. So personally, I would much prefer to be having this conversation with you face-to-face and getting to meet all of you and getting to know all of you, but that's just not going to happen right now. But on the other side, there are some things we can do with Zoom that we were never able to do before. It's awesome to invite speakers from anywhere, and I'd love to give you some examples, but I'm kind of running out of time here, but maybe you know them. But my point here is there are some things that we've learned from Zoom that we should keep doing after this pandemic is over, and it's very likely that this will end during your year as president. So we need to keep the best of what we've learned from Zoom and bring back the best of what we had before when we could meet face to face. So let's get back to the 5 areas. The third one is membership events, and networking mixers is a great example. So the example I want to share here is from the Ronkonkoma Club in Long Island. And I talked with Justin, and he mentioned that a critical step in growing that club was holding a series of membership events, cocktail events, where they would invite 25 to 30 people and get 5 or 6 new members each time. This is, and over a period of 2 years, they brought in about 20 to 25 new members. We've had tremendous success with this in our district. If you're going to start a satellite club or a new club, this is an absolute must to get the word out. But of course, you've got to combine it with the public image and the others as well. Step 4 is about flexibility. Now, what's that all about? That's alternate membership types, dues structures, alternate meeting times, focusing on service. The example I want to share here is the Metro New York City Club. Now, this club is unique in many, many ways, and I talked with Cecily about the Metro New York City Club, but they've got so many different types of events. They have, well, before the pandemic, they had dinner meetings, they have many cultural outings, they've got potluck fundraisers, they've got a Bollywood party that's a major fundraiser. And her comment to me about why has their club grown was that they're open and indulging to the people's passions in the club. And they've got very, very diverse passions. And then finally, let's talk about starting satellite clubs or alternate meeting times. So this is the way you can really grow your club. And there's lots of ways to think about that. Alternate meeting times, looking in an adjacent community, young professionals, maybe starting a service group. During that Anytown USA video at the beginning, we were talking about maybe there's some people that just don't want to come to meetings, but they want to serve. We've got service groups in our district. But the example I want to share here is the Rhinebeck Club. The Rhinebeck Club is a lunchtime club. And in the last year, they started a cocktail hour club. And their cocktail hour club meets once a month, and then they do a service project once a month. And they were able to add able to add 20 new members through this satellite club. We've got a club in our district, Elizabethtown, not in our district, but in Pennsylvania, Elizabethtown near Harrisburg, that has added over 50 members by adding a satellite club. All you need to do is think about there's lots of people in your district with a heart for service. How do we, how do we attract them? And what is it that would attract them to be part of a Rotary Club and help us live the ideal of service above self? So thank you for your time. I hope I've given you one or two ideas that maybe you can take with you. I hope I shared my passion with you about growing membership. There isn't going to be time for questions, but if you do have questions, you can ask me through my email, and I'm sure if there's questions in the chat box, we'll go through those, and I'll do my best to answer them as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you for the last 25, 30 minutes.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you all had good discussions. I know that in our room, there was some great discussions. And I hope that you all learned something new from your colleagues and your classmates. I do want to take a few minutes to highlight some of the ideas that were shared tonight. I'm going to call on a few moderators to share with all of us some of the highlights from their room. So let's start with Karen DiMatteo.
Okay, unmute myself. Say hey. Good to see you all. Yes, we had some great discussion in breakout room number 3. So Ken is going to be making sure that every member in the club has a job and that any new members are paired with veteran members. Sally came up with just a new program partnering with a local high school that's going to be putting in a greenhouse. And they've come up with a lot of different ideas to work together with the school and the interactors on that greenhouse project, and with hopes that they will bring in some new members from that, as well as engage their current members. Let's see, Lester is going to ensure that every member is also in a committee. That is a growing thing there. And Ken from the Elizabethtown Rotary, or Elizabeth Rotary, sorry, said that it's important to belong to the Chamber of Commerce, and by that way you can meet more people and encourage them to come and join your club, maybe be a speaker first and join afterwards. And we also talked about Toastmasters and our partnership with them and reaching out to Toastmasters in your community. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. That was great. Let's go to Tony Marmo.
Right, thank you so much. So our group it was kind of a spirited discussion, as one would expect. And it was kind of mixed results on the membership plans. About half the folks in the room had a membership plan. Some had just a membership chair. Some had a membership committee. So we certainly encouraged not a one-person show. If you're going to have a membership approach and plan, involve a committee of people, certainly involve the club. Don't keep it a secret. Don't be afraid to talk about it. We talked about retention as a way to grow and checking in on members that you may not have heard from, especially during the pandemic, especially if you're Zooming or folks don't Zoom. Is anyone picking up the phone? There is phones still, cell phones. And so please check in on those people. And that was emphasized by every person in our breakout room 18. We talked about, some of them folks talked about altering their dues structure to accommodate what's happening during the pandemic. Again, it's a way to get people engaged, certainly in the club. If you talk about dues, it's a way to keep them interested, and also altering meeting time. One of the members said, hey, we met at lunch, it didn't work. We changed our meeting time to evening, it worked. Again, have to be flexible. We talked about a concept called a visitor's day, where each club member asks somebody, or maybe a portion of the club members asks a guest to attend, and have a format of talking about what the club does, their service projects, their fundraisers, why I joined Rotary, why I'm staying in Rotary. This engages the club members, and you bring in 8 or 10, depending on your club size, new members, and a portion of whom will probably join because we have a lot to sell. So, you know, it was a very active and engaged group, and thank you to all of them for participating.
Thank you, Tony. That was great. Now let's go to Jacob Lerner.
Wow, following both of those explanations is, we too had quite a spirited discussion and touched on a lot of the same topics, but we also covered a couple of different ones. We had quite a few clubs that were from some more rural and smaller areas, and we were discussing just kind of how to tackle membership. And while having a committee is a great idea, when you only have 8 or 10 members and everyone is involved in everything, that was, you know, some challenges that they found. Well, we discussed a little bit around the pandemic, and, you know, while clubs really focused on retention versus just getting new members, was getting everyone hooked up using Zoom and looking forward to being involved in regular meetings coming up soon. We talked a little bit about communication and getting the word out, because it seems like some of the clubs are really working and still doing a lot, but they're not all as savvy on social media. And so how do they get into into using social media and some of their local news, newspapers and other outlets, as well as any of the areas where there are some clubs that are very close to each other working together, because there are in some of the more dense areas, there's clubs that are really next to each other. And lastly, just remembering that we talk a lot about, we got a little bit into the DEI category, and that there's a lot of areas where it's easier, depending on the traditional sense of what you'd consider DEI, to find members, but that it's really a very broad spectrum, and we need to grow on all the topics that are covered in that DEI category, and clubs are really beginning to think about that.
Thank you, Tony. That was great. What a great night we had tonight. Good sessions. I want to thank all of you for joining us. As a reminder, the PETS website is full of information, including a few links for a few exhibitors, including Flags for Hero, which is a community supporting fundraiser opportunity. You also have information from Shelter Box, Rotary's largest partner. Please take the time to learn about them. Be sure to check out the virtual booth for Russell Hampton. Each week, we are going to give away a $100 gift card to a president-elect from Russell Hampton. We will be doing that in just a moment. A reminder that we will be together again every Tuesday in March. Our topic next week is Service and Our Rotary Foundation, hosted by DGE Shelby Rhodes from 7475. Our feature speaker is past Rotary President and Foundation Trustee Ian Risley, who is joining us live from Australia. Boy, without Zoom, we could never have somebody from Australia. So that's great. Please be sure to complete your required learning courses and reading material prior to next Tuesday. Lastly, our team wants to know what you thought about tonight's event. In the chat box, you will see a link for a very short survey, and I promise you, it will all take you no more than 60 seconds, and it's completely anonymous. The feedback is critical for us making each week be a little better than the week before. So, Mike, let's give away a $100 Russell Hampton gift card now. Only our president-elects are eligible. Go ahead and spin the wheel, Mike.
All right, you all see the wheel? Let's see, let's give our rotary wheel of names a spin. Jill Owens.
Congratulations, Jill. Once again, thank you for joining us, and everybody enjoy the rest of your night.